And he didn't put together that his action caused her reaction. And oftentimes, people do things and don't really recognize the consequences of their actions. And rather than stepping back and thinking about what he was doing and what it was causing, he just blamed the animal for being upset about him taking her babies away. In terms of how we eat, we should also step back and think about how our food impacts our health and how what we eat also impacts the world. Again, changing laws is important, and we will continue working on that. It takes time. But changing how we eat is something each of us can do every day and something each of us control every day. But at Farm Sanctuary, the animals don't have their babies taken away, if they have babies, although we do not allow them to breed. The only time they would have babies is if they came in pregnant or if they came in with their babies. But at Farm Sanctuary, one of the animals that came in is Nikki. She was rescued from the floods in Iowa, which some of you may have heard about a couple years ago. And when those floods hit, some of the pigs were able to escape their gestation crates and escape the farrowing crates and to make a run for freedom. And Nikki was one of those sows that did that. And she gave birth on a levee amid the flooding. And she was there raising her young. And it shows that these animals still have these instincts. This pig farmer and the industrial pig industry argues that these sows cannot raise their young. They have to be kept apart and raised in crates and so on. It's counterintuitive, but that's the attitude they have, and that's frankly what they believe. I don't understand it, but that's what they believe. But anyway, so here's Nikki with her babies, and counter to that farmer's experience, we can go in with her and we don't get attacked. In fact, there's Susie, our shelter director, touching noses with Nikki. But Nikki knows she's in a safe place. She trusts Susie, and she knows that she's not going to be harmed. These animals have intelligence. They want, like cats or dogs or any of us, they just want to live a life free of pain. And also they want to experience joy. And here's actually a couple of pigs at the farm who are smiling. Those are happy pigs. I was at an industry conference not too long ago, and I'm a vegan on the panel, and I talk to agribusiness people, often to factory farmers and small farmers, and I always talk about my belief that it's better not to eat animals, and that although certain farms are not as bad as other farms, ultimately the best type of approach is not to eat animals. And so I was at one of these conferences, and I'm sitting at the table, and they say, so what kind of pig farming do you think is humane? And I said, well, the kind where they don't kill the animals. And I kind of got a little bit of a rise. And then for lunch, of course, I ordered a vegan meal at this conference. And the person who was leading the conference right before lunch got up and told everybody that out there on the lunch table there's some vegan meals. And at first, there were some chuckles and people were laughing and elbowing each other about how silly it was that there were some vegan meals. But then the person up at the podium said, and they look really good. So, and there's not enough of them, so if you didn't order vegan meals, don't touch them. And so, even at conferences like this, there's a recognition that vegan food looks good. And they're starting to provide it. And there's a growing awareness all over the place. And there's a recognition that these are animals, not just commodities. And there's now starting to be a push away from this commodification. Although, I have to say, it's still very strong. We have a long way to go. But there's a growing, burgeoning awareness. When we worked on the campaign in Florida to ban gestation crates, and we went in to talk to the manager of the swine unit at the University of Florida. And when I walked into his office, he said, what, you want to put my people out of business? And my response to him was, we just want to prevent suffering. And we talked for a while, and he gave me all the regular arguments about they have to put these sows in the crates because they're dangerous, they will attack farmers, they can't take care of their young, it's more efficient. All these arguments about why using the crates is the most efficient way to do it. And I kept coming back and saying, well, some farmers raise animals without the crates, and it's not a problem. We take care of animals at our farm, and we don't get attacked like you're talking about. And as time went, his position started softening, and he sort of shifted and said, you know what everybody should see? Is the sow build a nest. And that's a picture of one of the pigs at Farm Sanctuary building a nest. And then he also said, you know what's missing on the farm today? Is pigmanship. So he kind of came to recognize that actually farmers today don't really understand their animals. You know, if you put an animal in a crate for his or her whole life, how can you really get to know that animal? And that's kind of the irony. Farmers who raise animals by the thousands don't really understand them. You know, they have the experience of that pig farmer who treats the pig badly, and the pig responds, and then the farmer concludes that they're violent and aggressive animals, without taking any responsibility for our own role in the process. So it's important to be aware of these issues and to make choices that are consistent with our own values. And when people see the images of animals in confinement and hear about live animals thrown in trash cans, most people think that that's not okay. But unfortunately, most people are unwittingly buying meat, milk, and eggs from farms that are engaged in those practices. And oftentimes a response, you know, when I or others raise concern about this, you know, people say, well, I don't really want to know. But I think it's important to take responsibility and to ideally feel good about the food choices we're making and not to have to turn away. And as we are recognizing that animals don't belong in cages, that we share the planet with them, that they, like cats and dogs, are individuals, as we treat them that way and get them out of crates, it's also liberating to us as well. How we treat animals affects the animals, obviously, but it also affects us. It says something about us. I feel very badly for the person who works at the slaughterhouse, and I wish nobody had to do that. Now, can you imagine what it would be like for 8 hours a day to be cutting the throats of animals? How violent and bloody and horrible that would be for the animals and for the people. And I wish nobody had to do that. So at the end of the day, it's really about being a citizen and not just a consumer. And here's a few quotes I really love. Each snowflake in an avalanche pleads not guilty. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Again, there are two main ways things change. One is through policy, through laws and different business practices and so on. And it's important to be engaged in that arena. But the other way is through personal choices. And each of us, every day, makes choices about what we eat. It's all important to vote, but we only vote, every so often, over the course of a year or over several years. But we eat every day. And every time we spend $1, we're voting for and supporting a particular food system. And it's important to support systems that we feel good about. And there is thankfully now a burgeoning movement towards farmers markets. These things are popping up all over the place. There's more community-supported agriculture programs. These things are expanding. There are community gardens. And these are all very positive trends and very good options to support farmers that are doing things in a better way. And the final quote I have here is from Margaret Mead, which I totally love. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does. Change starts often at the grassroots. I just moved to Washington, D.C. to be doing more policy work there, and I will do that. But a lot of the change is going to happen in communities like this because of people like you. And to that, the animals at Farm Sanctuary say thank you. And I guess I'll open it up for questions now and comments, and if there's anything I've said that doesn't make sense, please, challenge me on it. I want to have and just raise any questions you want to raise.
You mentioned earlier about osteoporosis. What are some of the other food-related health